So thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar today. So we're going to talk about onboarding. Why did we actually choose this theme at Assess First? It's because it's a topic that is actually really new for us. I don't know if maybe you've checked my LinkedIn profile, but I haven't joined Assess First that long ago. And just before joining Assess First, we didn't have any onboarding process actually. We didn't have that many people joining us, so we could personalize each arrival. But my goal at arriving at Assess First was actually to recruit many more people. And then we decided to create a real process and standardize all the arrivals. So it's something that is quite new and we've been working on for a lot of months actually. So this is why we're going to talk about this topic and do a little focus on COVID at the end of the presentation. So to present myself, I'm Aurélie Lamidicas. I'm in charge of the recruitment talent acquisition manager at Assess First, and today I'm with Becca.
Hi guys. Yep. So I believe there are some people that I see who I do know, but for those who don't, my name is Becca, Global Account Executive here at Assess First, and my job is basically to explore new business across the English-speaking markets. Now, before I go ahead, apologies that I'm not on video. We tried it earlier, and it kept on bugging, so I couldn't choose between sharing my screen and you seeing my face, so I'm afraid you're going to have to put up with just the picture. But the reason as to why I wanted to join Aurélie on this specific webinar is because, well, she mentioned, I know that we've been doing some really great things recently, not just during this time of COVID, but before at Assess First, and onboarding has become a real focus. So yeah, we thought it would be great to share some of those ideas with you. But before all of that, for those of you who have not tuned in across the last couple of weeks, we particularly focused on the topic of attracting talent with my colleague Com, which was 2 weeks ago. And so in continuation of that, moving forward onto the next step, let's say that you've managed to attract that star talent, that star recruit. The big question is, what do you do next? And we'll now have a look at how to put in place a fantastic onboarding experience that will ultimately not just integrate your entire team, but make that new starter, you know, feel welcome, feel a little less nervous on their first day, and feel part of the wider team. So when we tend to discuss, I guess, the errors to avoid in this type of analysis into a subject, we always focus upon the errors. But the first question to pose is, today, are your employees satisfied with their onboarding process? And it's relatively positive. New starters think employers keep their promises. 27% experience of bad onboarding, and 73% a good onboarding. Now, I just want to run through a couple of figures which paint a realistic but possibly surprising picture today. 65% of new hires consult job offers, again, within 91 days of being hired. So that, to be clear, is more than half of those recruited in the first 3 months will debate maybe whether they've made the right decision in joining you guys or not. So, you know, I think that number speaks for itself. It's pretty large. To kind of couple that, new hires leave their new jobs within the first week. Here you can see that 25% of new hires will leave the job within just 1 week of being there. So let's say if you're recruiting 8 newbies at the same time, you're going to be seeing 2 of those on average leave the business within that first week. So the big question is why? Why is this the case? Why are new people to your business not always satisfied? And why in turn does it then become really, really important that people feel that they have a good onboarding experience? And that's what we're going to take a look at now. So for those of you who did follow the previous webinars with Aurélie and Com, you will remember when they presented this kind of pattern of classic onboarding of a team member. And it's pretty simple. We see at the beginning on the lower left corner here that it tends to be that obviously people new to a business take their time to understand, to learn, and over time they grow in their level of competence and feel at ease with the job. However, what we should be looking at, what we should be kind of considering in implementing is what we can consider as an optimized onboarding, i.e. really making that time, that whether it be 6 weeks, whether it be 3 months, whether it be 6 months, really making that initial contact, that initial training, that initial informing time frame as optimized as possible. Why? Well, here it pretty much says it all. If somebody experiences an optimized onboarding that is really getting to the key of what your new recruits need, then you're going to be seeing a higher level of productivity, an increase in 70%, which is obviously a big increase, which can come at potentially quite a small amount of effort. But the next question to kind of think about is there a correlation between this type of onboarding, this optimized onboarding, and their departure from a role? So at what point in time do they leave? And in short, the answer is yes. So here you can see the difference in departure if you implement and follow an onboarding classic, and if you look at implementing a really optimized onboarding. You can see that actually delay in departure of a new starter is increased by 58%. 58% is the chances of them still being there in 3 years, and you're moving away from people leaving within the first week, within the first month, within the first couple of months. So hopefully that can really highlight the importance of onboarding and the necessity really to increase that level of competency in a new starter, but also the importance of delaying that possible departure. So what does a good and bad onboarding actually look like? And sometimes it's quite difficult to identify these differences, because especially if you're in a company who whereby they've got a process that is very rigid and sort of set up in place for a long time, it may be difficult to actually understand what that difference between good or bad onboarding is. And so I wanted to talk through and to speak through now, starting with the Power Rangers, and talk through the 6 kind of classic errors to avoid whilst onboarding. So first is, well, we often think that new starters tend to join us the day that they set foot into the office. Or in the current situation, maybe first log into their email or onto your online messaging service. But actually, nothing could be further from the truth. It would actually be more accurate and more inclusive to consider that they join the team from the point upon which they've signed their contract, and identifying this as the time at which somebody joins the business is even more important. If somebody has, I don't know, a notice period to give of, let's say, a month up to 3 months before they start, that's obviously 3-month wait is a long time. We all know a lot can happen in 3 months. And so it's similar, I guess, to a new film being launched. Let's say there's the announcement of a great film being released in a couple of months. Everyone's excited. It's like the prequel, whatever. And then between then and the day that it's actually released, if nothing happens, no advertisement, no contact with their potential audience, well, we'll all forget about the fact that film's been released in cinemas. We'll lose the motivation, the excitement to actually go and watch it. And that's, in essence, the reason why teasers exist. And the same idea can be echoed in the workplace to tease then that new starter during this period and keep them, up to date with the company and ultimately excited to join the team. Now at Assess First, we do exactly that. So whether it be in the form of a text message, sort of emailing with news updates, especially during this period of COVID where, everything seems a bit uncertain, that regular contact in between signature and starting date puts the new starter at ease a little bit and just makes them feel a little bit comfortable and a little less anxious about starting, on their new day, on their first day. So before the current situation, we would invite new starters very regularly to our events, so our team building events that we do quite often. And even if they're going to be joining us, in a couple of months, we use that time at the team building to get them to meet some of those, those people that they're going to be working with. So again, they feel a lot more comfortable. We also integrate the manager into the process. So they will send a little message of congratulations directly to their new recruit, which is nice. It's always reassuring to hear that your manager is obviously happy with the decision that you're going to be starting the new role. And then we'll also send an email a week ahead, kind of explaining start dates and all of the kind of logistics and everything, really just to make sure that they feel a little more comfortable. One thing as well that we do is we make sure that their desk is set up, and they've got all the equipment that they need ready for when they start. And I know that probably sounds silly, but it hasn't necessarily always been the case at Access First. There used to be an occasion that maybe, there was a missing mouse or charger that needed to be ordered. But as I mentioned at the beginning, onboarding and welcoming our team, especially now that it's growing at a rapid rate, has been something that we've really worked on, and it's really important to us. So another error that you must try to avoid doing is to really ramp up this first day and jam pack it with stuff to do. Of course, we want the most productive team member up and running, as operational as quickly as possible. But to have training after training on your first day, even your first week, well, imagine it's a lot of information, a lot of pressure, and the new guy or girl may even consider, oh my God, what the hell have I actually, got myself into? And so when we talk about not charging their day with lots of training and activities, I'm going to quickly refer to something called Bloom's taxonomy. A little bit of theory here, so it's not just our opinion. Now, I don't know who of you have heard of this, but just briefly, it's basically a framework that is the main or the kind of most popular framework that teachers use in their teaching to effectively write learning objectives. Now, it was elaborated by Bloom, psychologist, and his team members, and it consists of 6 major categories. And these 6 major categories ultimately need to be followed in this order to really optimize the learning of somebody, of a subject. So these 6 steps start with the memorizing of information, following on through to understanding of the information, the application, the analyzing of the information, the evaluating of the information, to the final goal of creating. And this idea of creating is, maybe looking at what's existing in terms of a process and looking to adapt it accordingly. Now, we've done exactly that for our customer success team, whose job is to run the training sessions with clients. We've set up a longer learning plan because that ultimately will have the best effects, moving away from this idea of chucking as much information within the first couple of days as possible. So what we have here is an Excel sheet that looks a bit old-fashioned and is actually a French template, so it's not ideal, but it does explain the main themes. Now, on the left-hand side, you've got the content, i.e. the objectives of what those trainers need to have achieved before kind of passing their onboarding. And then in the green and the kind of cream cells, you've got a track of where everybody is. Now, we also look at the attitude of those team members as well, that we can track and trace, and you can see that we've got Bloom's taxonomy reference at the bottom there, so that's always a consideration. And then when looking at a specific example of a team member who's currently in training, you can see that for the majority of learning objectives, they've progressively improved over time. So you can see that because the green has the columns have start from yellow to pale green to dark green. But there's a couple whereby it's actually reversed, and that highlights that maybe there's been kind of a decrease in progression. But information like this makes us very much aware, us obviously as a member of management team, but also the individual. They're going to be getting as much feedback on a weekly basis as possible to make sure that they have the best opportunity to succeed and improve. And on that same note, we don't just use one manager to record this and to monitor this. We have a selection of 3 or 4 to make sure that they get as many opinions and as many elements of feedback as possible. So I just wanted to finish up speaking about job shadowing. Now, actually, in Access First, we try our best to eliminate this or to avoid it. I know that in larger companies with larger teams, this is something that's more common, simply, I think, because the teams are so big that managers aren't necessarily able to manage all new recruits. And so they may well assign a team member to show that new starter the ropes. As I mentioned, this is something that we try to avoid just because each person who starts may not have that same level of information in the way that each existing team member who may shadow them may communicate differently, may have a different level of enthusiasm, may have a different opinion of the company. And so we have prepared an onboarding that is a lot more collaborative. And actually now new starters have sessions with different people and different teams, dependent upon the kind of aspect that they need to learn, whether it be a technical aspect, whether it be go to somebody for writing specific emails. And the idea of that is to make sure that new starter speaks with a lot of people as opposed to just one, getting only one opinion of everyday life at the company. And they're also then able to gather a much more holistic approach to skills and processes that they need to pick up on. So I'll now pass over to Aurélie. Let me just, there you go, you should have control.
No problem. There we go. Can you see my screen? I guess so. So the next mistake that we should make sure not to forget about when we're talking about onboarding is giving a totally unclear program agenda for the first week of the person. And I think you've already been through that experience, coming up on the Monday and having absolutely no clue of what is going to happen during the week. It's really frustrating, and it's even more stressful for a candidate that comes in a new company with new people on a probably new position. So it's easier for you in terms of organization to actually make something clear, and for your candidate to be less stressed. And what we decided to do at Access First is to use Trello. So maybe you do not know about Trello. It's a project management tool that you can find over internet, and it works throughout columns and cards in which you can add details, and you can move a card from another according to the step. And we decided to create different types of cards according to Access First, the position, and the integration. Like there's 3 big themes that we can find in this Trello, and we share this Trello to each of our new joiners. Why did we create this? Is because even though we don't want to overload a new joiner in the week, he will have a lot of things to do and a lot of appointments and trainings. But whatever happens, there's necessarily some moments where he has actually nothing to do because the manager is absent or busy, or because the team members aren't available. There's some moments he's going to end up in front of the screen and saying, like, what am I supposed to do? And he's probably going to be totally lost. So your main reflex is actually to go on your internal Wikipedia and read some tons of documents and your values or other stuff like that. But we thought it would be more interesting to actually give some hints and advices to this new joiner, so that he always have a place where he can find some tasks to actually achieve. It can be really simple tasks like updating your LinkedIn profile, or adding everyone on LinkedIn, or reading the code, the values of the company, checking out our success stories, or other things like that. But at least everything is listed and he has access to it. It's really to make it simple. And for example, we have some assess first curiosity, cards. For example, getting interested in our customer teams. It's mean going to discuss with our account executive team, customer success team, account manager, to get more information about the client process in assess first, but also our product team, like with discussing with our science and innovation team who creates the questionnaires, or IT team to understand a bit more about how it works and everything. And we also have other cards that allow them to have access to our, let's say, Facebook, something like that. It's really difficult when you join a company and no one, remembering everyone's face and name can be really harsh at the beginning, and we've experienced it. I remember joining at the moment of our seminar, so in 2 days I had to remember absolutely everything and everyone. It was really, really hard. And so that's why we created actually this trombinoscope, as we call it in French, so that new joiners can actually refer to this Trello to remember everyone's name and what team do they belong to. But it's not only cards about Assess First, it's also cards to help the integration. It's not mandatory, but we push our collaborators and new joiners to actually invite other people to play ping pong or share a lunch or things like that as well. What we actually are going to do during this first week in our agenda is give training about our platform. Assess First is quite a complicated application, and we train our clients actually to understand and really make sure that they use it in the most efficient way. And our new joiners actually go through this one-day training as well. But we also are going to share something that personally I've never seen at this point of my career in other companies, is actually sharing with them why they have been recruited them and not another person. Why specifically them, and according on what? According on the job, but also the team and the affinity between people, and on the culture. So I know some of you actually know Assess First and what we do, but probably some of you don't. Actually, every candidate that we recruit pass our questionnaires, and the objective is to see if they are going to match our culture and the way we actually work. So this is the model on which we base our recruitment. We call that DNA. It's the specific points that is common to all of us in Assess First. Like, for example, consult other before making decisions is quite low at Assess First because we are all in quite autonomous, and it's quite common to all of us, and we are looking for people that are going to be like that actually. So it's not something that comes out of from thin air, we didn't invent it. It's really based on the analysis of our sample of people from Assess First. And on the right, you can see all the different motivations that we expect most of the time from the candidates we are going to recruit. And obviously, when we recruit someone, the candidate actually doesn't know anything about this because he doesn't have access to it. But we think it's important to explain to him how it works once he joins us, and based on what he has been recruited. We also are interested in the management style of the managers and the collaborators of their teams. For example, we have Noélie on the top, who has a management style which is quite visionary and coach. And she actually is managing today Claire, who is below. And Claire is actually expecting from her manager to be visionary and coach. So it's really a match, and they're probably going to work pretty efficiently. but we like to explain this to our new candidates as well. We are also interested in the group dynamic. So this is Noéli's team, for example, the customer success team, and we can see that they have different types of behavior. And as an example, Etienne, which is in blue, stays more in the background than the others. So maybe Noélie will have to adapt her communication strategy and the way she behaves and collaborates with Etienne for some tasks and mission, for example. It's important for us to see where each member of the team is going to be in terms of behavior and affinity with the others. And if we take back our Trello we were talking about before, we also have a clear vision and description of the objectives of the job. Most of the time, when you come into a position, well, you know what you have to do, obviously, but you don't, in the first week, know exactly what you are supposed to do and at what timeline it's supposed to happen as well. So we decided to make it totally transparent and clear, and transparency actually increases performance. So it's really important to make things quite simple. And for example, our SDR are required in their first months actually to get interested in their sector, because they work by sector, and the HR markets, and look for their competitors and get interested into it and curious. But also, for example, do their prospection cold mailing for the first time. So they have steps and checklists to actually complete. Another point that is important and make sure not to neglect is the presentation. It may seem obvious, but most of the time you get close to your team, but you have no idea of who is working in other teams. So what we decided to do is that we use Slack. Maybe some of you do know it, but some may not. It's a communication tool that we use at Access First. And whenever we have a new joiner, we announce, like make a little message and upload the picture of the person to say, hey, we have a new joiner. This person is joining in like 2 weeks. He's going to be on this position and working with. So at least all the people from Access First have the information on who is going to join us. And we also have this event that we call a BIM, a bimensuel in France. It's twice a month, and it's a small event on Monday mornings where all SS First is gathered, and we're going to spend 2 minutes per team to talk about what happened during the 2 previous weeks. So it's like a little update of what happened actually. And it's the opportunity for me to actually present to the whole Access First who will be the new joiners, but also for the new joiners of that day, because new joiners only arrive on BIM days, to present themselves in English to the whole team. Like 2 sentences are on who they are, their passion, what team are they joining, and their manager. And it's also the moment where we have a breakfast all together, and the opportunity for new joiners to mix with others and talk informally. We also have what we call a donut. So donut is not only dedicated to new joiners, it's absolutely for everyone in Access First. It's a bot, you know, a little robot that you can add to Slack, and it's randomly going to pick 2 persons from Access First and create a little speaking channel together, and offer them the opportunity to go to a lunch together or take a coffee, or just a moment to know each other a bit more. And we all know this. For some reasons, your activity is not related to another team. So there are some people in the company that you probably see far away, but you have absolutely no idea what their names are. And we truly want to avoid this in Access First as we are growing, and want to make sure that me as talent acquisition, I will talk with some IT people, that Noemi from operation is going to talk with some sales, for example, etc. So Donut actually kind of forces us, but in a good way, to go and talk to other people. And COVID actually made it a bit more difficult, and some decided to actually push their donuts to the end of the containment and wait this summer to drink rosé in a coffee, or actually do it by distance. And that's what I did, for example, last week, 2 hours over Zoom with a team member to actually talk about everything but job. And for the teams, still for the presentation, the new joiners on their first day have a lunch with their team and manager. It's a nice moment to do the presentation in a small group. The last point, which is pretty important, is forgetting feedbacks. It actually means neither receiving or giving feedbacks. I'm truly convinced that a new joiner with his new eye has probably the best inputs to actually improve your recruitment process or integration process. So it's really important to grab some feedback from him, but also from the manager, and share, all this information. So what we decided to do is, as talent acquisition, I have 3 meetings with my new joiner. I'm sorry it is in French. My type form doesn't exist in English at this point. So we have a first meeting at the end of the first week, which is really dedicated to the recruitment process. How it was it too long, too short? Did he meet enough interviewers or not enough interviewers? Was it difficult? Was it simple? And getting more information about this, but also about his integration. How was his first day? Was everyone nice? Hopefully. What did he think about the BIM and everything like that? At the end of the first month is really to get interested into his comprehension of the tool, because he has been trained. He has been normally practicing the tool in our application for about 1 month now. And I want to make sure that everything is really clear for him. Does he still need information about maybe one part of the application that is that is complicated and that he still doesn't understand? Or maybe he doesn't understand the way we built the pricing of the tool, or whatever. He can just ask us. And the third point is really to get an overview of his integration. So in terms of team, is everything okay in the team? Is everything okay with his manager? In the whole assets first, how was it? But also in terms of position, in job, in task. Did what we say in the interview is actually what is happening in the reality? I need to make sure that it's related, and that we didn't say fake or wrong things during the interview and that are not real actually on a daily basis. So that's the point of this meeting. But there's also meetings between the manager and the new joiner, obviously, and the manager and myself. But the manager is mainly going to be concentrated on the tool and its understanding, the methods, the process of evolution and practice, and understanding of the job, and the integration within his own team. And actually, we still have one last mistake not to make, is that thinking that the onboarding is over once he has the position. It's obvious, but most of the time, an onboarding actually ends whenever the person is in the position. And we at Assets First believe that it should last forever, some kind. And that's why we like to celebrate moments all together. And for example, personal birthday, we do it each month. And even when we can't be at the office, like during this period because of COVID, we still do it. And we celebrate professional anniversaries as well. Charlie, for example, celebrated his 2nd year at Assets First at the beginning of the year. So it was important for us to celebrate this moment that is important. And even though, sorry, I'm in French, it's in French again, but for example, Emeric and Romain celebrated their 1st year during the containment, so we couldn't celebrate with them at the office, but at least we did a Slack message to make sure that they're not forgotten. And we still do a lot of events. We do some team buildings and apéro visio, typically French, and we see each other like every Thursday and everything. So it's really important for us to maintain the link between us. So it was really, really some kind of a long process. As I told you, there was some kind of nothing before I joined. And we decided to put this into action thanks to a team building. I told you about the seminar that we did in September. There were some team building activities, and we asked everyone to actually share their inputs and ideas for a new onboarding at Assess First. So after we gathered all these ideas, we created a team project of 4 persons to start creating this timeline and this process that we then validated to our direction to make sure everything is okay. Then we started this deployment, but first with the managers, we created presentation and we presented the new process and how they're going to be involved in this process, and then communicate to the whole Assess First as well, because we thought it was important as we involved them at the beginning of this process by asking them their ideas. It's really important to show them that we have done something of their ideas. So that's why we create also a presentation at the end to show them, oh, you're already at Assess First, but this is what is going to happen for the new joiners now. So I'm finally doing a small focus on Corona and COVID-19 and Marine, who joined us something like 1.5 months ago. So she joined us in the middle of the containment and doing a distance onboarding. So as Becca told you at the beginning, it's really important for us to make sure that people belong to the team even before they actually start the job. So Marine already knew some people because she came to events, because she came to some team building events. So she wasn't completely lost as she knew some people, and she had what we call a friendly buddy in Assess First. It's actually someone from another team that is dedicated to her integration. So it's not someone that is going to help her in terms of job and task, but to answer to all her daily problematics that maybe her manager is not available to answer, or her teammates, and she has some kind of a reference and that she can trust and to whom she can ask questions. So what actually not much has changed from a face-to-face onboarding and a distance onboarding. Ikram, her manager, was obviously more present, but we decided not to put everything on Ikram's shoulders and really involve the whole team in Marine's integration in terms of people integration, but also job integration. So there were some workshops with many different teams, the marketing team, the team members, the account executive team. She had some challenges also because business maybe, I'm sorry, I forgot what I told. It's okay. So actually the Trello, she told us, helped her a lot, because even though you have some moments where you don't know what to do at the office, well, at least you have a team member next to you and you actually can watch what he's doing. But when you're at home, it's even more difficult to find those small moments where you have to do something. So she told us that it was really a great tool to have during this period. So actually, we're done with our presentation. So don't hesitate to ask questions in the Q&R channel or the discussion channel that maybe we can answer. I don't know if you're actually concerned with distance onboarding today, and if you have questions or anything, we're available. I can't have access to the... Becca, do you see any question?
So questions that we have, let me just have a look. So first off, you spoke about the possibility of 25% of new starters leaving the business within the first week. How do you manage that as a business in terms of communicating that to the team? Because it's obviously not something positive. Well, yeah, certainly. I think considering that Assess First, because we are in the industry of talent acquisition, you know, HR recruitment, assessment tools, And we're also very active as a business in participating with articles and studies, whether it be our CEOs or our science team, science committees. I think there's already quite a lot of awareness of these types of figures across the team, probably more than in a general company, because like I said, we're exposed to it a lot more. So there's that advantage, that maybe our team are more prepared to, you know, hear that somebody's left after such a short amount of time. As I mentioned before, the 2 out of 5 who leave within the week. But I think the key thing when you communicate that to your team, you know, it doesn't matter really how aware they are of that sort of thing or not, is to be as transparent as possible. I think like any kind of situation involving your people. To explain that, I guess, you know, quite simply, somebody's left the business, whether it's, you know, a reason of to maybe they didn't feel part of the culture, maybe they felt that they didn't like the role itself. There's very much a team emphasis, I know, at Access First. So, you know, we're still quite a small business. And so there's still strong relationships between the teams. And that's very much echoed in the way that we communicate to teams across the business in terms of honesty, you know, in terms of timely communication as well, and just clarity. So I think that it's definitely the right way forward in terms of explaining to your team something as kind of damning as that, really to just be as honest and clear and transparent as possible.
We have another question. I'm gonna read the whole of it. In our company, we must have trainings done within 30 days of their employment. We allow them to pick dates on the calendar to get this done. Okay, so actually people can choose whenever they want to get trained within 30 days. Should we put that more towards the person by giving them a schedule from our perspective, or continue letting them pick their own training dates and times? Well, actually, it's pretty interesting to give the opportunity to the person to choose whenever she can be trained. But isn't it complicated in terms of logistic between people? Because, for example, at Access First, our trainings are pretty hard to organize because there's many people that are joining, and our customer success team is so busy that we can't just pick up a date like that randomly. So we have to organize that in advance. And so maybe at this point you can actually do it this way, but maybe in the future it would be harder if you have more people joining. I don't know how many joiners you have, but for us, it's easier to do it that way. And even for the new joiner, at least he has visibility on what is going to happen, and he doesn't have anything to do. We're doing it for him. We have a last question, I think, about should we share the anniversaries on LinkedIn? Obviously, I would say yes, because that's what we do on our Access First pages, LinkedIn and Instagram as well. It's for your employer branding as well. So I would convince you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, I get it. It is organized in advance. We have one big class certain times of the month. Then yes, it may be a good idea to leave the choice to the person. If it's organized, if it's working well, I think it's also pretty nice. In our organization, it couldn't work because we're not flexible in terms of schedule, and sometimes we have even external persons joining these sessions of training, so we can't. But if your organization allows this, then yeah, I think it's pretty nice.
I think it also, that actually is quite positive in that it gives, the responsibility sits with the new starter, so you can kind of measure, you know, what their motivation's like as well, as to whether they get something in the diary straight away or if they're sort of very last minute.
Probably. Okay, great. Well, I think we're done. thanks a lot for joining us. Well, it's really a pleasure. And have a nice day.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.